What happens is it changes the entire energy of my makeup. And when you change that entire energy, not only is my attitude and my demeanor enjoyable and back to my old self, but I believe that energy change shifts in my cells and gives me the chance and my cells a chance to actually identify the cancer and remove it. There's that. Sorry about this. That was a little more intense than I thought.
I'm crying with you, to be honest. Welcome to the Global Affair podcast, brought to you by Love Out Loud, the world's largest love-based movement, actualizing a civilization of love by 2030. My name's Nicole Gibson, and join me and some of the world's brightest minds as we bring some of the most important and controversial conversations of our time into a space of unity. It's important to know that as your host, this isn't about my personal opinion or bias, but rather an opportunity to listen with love, honesty, curiosity, and reveal the true universal experience us humans have amongst the differences. So if you love the show, please let us know by giving us a rating and tell us how to make this conversation easier for other people to jump into as well. And with that, let's get it. Chad Vanags, I want to start by saying this is such a brave interview for you to be open to doing. And I know that you've had several of these conversations, probably many of these conversations since your diagnosis a year and a half ago, but I'm sure it never gets easier. And I just want to start with my acknowledgement and expression of gratitude for sharing this wisdom with our audience. And welcome to the Global Affair.
Thank you.
The Global Affair seeks to have really challenging conversations through a lens of love and compassion and altruism. And just even getting to know you before the show, you are the total embodiment of someone that can take a incredibly challenging situation and aspire to turn it into something world-changing, not just for you, but for others around you. When you were sitting in that doctor's office 16 months ago, and heard the words that I think all of us in one way or another feel terrified of hearing at some point in our lives, you have cancer, stage 4 cancer. How did that pivot your world and its axis?
I mean, literally, I was like, that's bullshit. There's no way. I surf, I exercise, I do all sorts of stuff. There's no way that I have it. But it definitely was, for the lack of a better term, it was a stick in my spoke. And if you want to get a little more intense on it, I want you to imagine driving. Now, if there's any Aussies listening, most of you probably drive stick, but for most Americans, they don't drive stick. So this might be a little difficult to put together. Just know that when you drive stick,
we drive manuals a lot.
Do you still in Australia?
I don't think so. I don't know. No? I like a manual, but yeah.
Well, in America, right? We haven't. All three of my I have 4 cars. One's not mine, but I have 4 cars in my driveway. All 4 are manual. And my neighbor goes, Chad, you have the greatest anti-theft device in America. Anyway, so the way I think about it is I'm driving down the road, down a highway, and I'm in 3rd gear. I'm driving in 3rd gear. Anybody who knows that you need to be 5th gear when you're driving a highway with a car that's manual. But I'm driving in 3rd gear, and you're starting to burn out that engine. That's essentially what was happening. Of course, I'm seeing this backwards, not at the time. And all of a sudden, I'm driving 3rd gear, burning it out, and I can just feel it. But the worst part is I'm looking on this highway, or I'm driving this highway, but I'm looking to the highway parallel to me or over there, saying that's the real highway I wanted to be on. And so that was how I was driving for apparently a long time. And then all of a sudden my body was like, it reached up for the e-brake and just pulled the e-brake as hard as it could. Pull the e-brake as hard as it could at 100 miles an hour on a highway. You start to fishtail and you flip like 15 times. I don't know, 5, 7, 8 times. And that's what it felt like.
Wow. And do you feel like that was your body just saying, listen to me?
Yeah, 100%. You just gave me chills thinking that, because I told you before we got on that I spend 2.5 hours working on my mind every single day. And the last couple of weeks, I've been essentially saying to myself, to my body, hey, thanks for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for pulling the e-brake. Please don't kill me. So it's one of those things where it's gratitude and also fear mixed in. But yeah.
That is so incredibly powerful, what you just shared, to be at a point of the dedication to this journey with so much uncertainty in the face of the ultimate uncertainty, and to be able to say to your body, thank you for the manifestation of this disease. It takes, I think, a unparalleled amount of courage and work. And you're now the face of becoming elite. But I know that there's so many stages from that moment in the doctor's office. And the one thing that I hope, I asked you this before we got on, but the one thing I hope our listeners gain from this episode is to understand whatever that kind of rock bottom moment is, that moment where it just feels like the world is completely imploding on itself, your world, that there is a process that will support you to transform and initiate through it. So take us from that moment through those stages. If they were the stages of grief, what did that look like in your life before we get to the things you've learned in retrospect?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have exact time frames, but like within the first few weeks, it was what's possible and not possible with this. Everything we saw at the beginning was pretty much over. In fact, when I did the bronchoscopy to confirm what the scan showed, and the bronchoscopist came back afterwards and I was still under anesthesia, he told my wife, he goes, it's pretty bad. You just need to go home and comfort him for his last days. And she held on to that for 2 months. She actually never told me until 2 months later. And so not only was she carrying the weight, but that was the seriousness of this. And so for the first couple months, it was like, what's the possibility of survival of any kind? Luckily, in an unfortunate way, right, the type of cancer I have is actually one of the most studied cancers. And so there's what we call a targeted therapy. And that's targeted therapy that will work for certain types of mutations, which is my EGFR. It worked. It started working. It reduced my brain lesions from 30 to 9, and reduced the lung tumor. The lung tumor was 5 times the average, down to half size. So only 2.5 times the average. And so it did that for a while, and it gave us a minute to like hold on for a second. And at that point, okay, we bought a little time, but you don't know what's coming next. You're like, I don't know. And the thing that I think that's tough is you just don't know what the options are, because I'm stage 4. And once you're stage 4, it's dire, right? Dire. And so it's, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And so for the first 6 months, then we stabilized a bit, like first 6 to 8, 10 weeks. I was like, okay, we got a little bit of, you can breathe for a second, but I still didn't know what the timing is. So then you go into YOLO mode. You only live once, baby. Let's just go and do anything and everything. I got an insurance payout because I was terminal. I have a whole life insurance policy, and I got what they call an accelerated death benefit. And so that gave me a chance to just not worry about working for a bit. I still did some, but not a lot.
What was that gear change? I find that really fascinating, from the kind of grief coming to terms with all consuming, like, oh my God, I've been told I might only have 6 months to live. So fuck it. I'm going to do whatever I want to do because I've got this new lease on life. Like, how quick was that gear change? Oh,
it's fast. And the reason is because in those first couple of weeks where I sat on my couch, basically behind me, just depressed, right? I was like, it's over. And I was doing you obviously contemplate a lot. You reflect back on, I was diagnosed at 39. So I'm reflecting back on 34 years because I can remember back to about 5 years old, right? So 34 years of reflection. You go through your entire timeline of life. And I was just like, dude, all the things I was trying to become, I didn't ignore. I just didn't prioritize the right way. And so the gear switch was, shit, if I got 6 months, if I can get 6 months, I'm going to try and get as much of the authentic self in as possible. It's this idea of the authentic self.
I love that so much. Do you feel, and this is just personal curiosity, in the past year and a half, you have lived more than those 39 years of your life combined?
The answer is yes and no, right? Yes, in the sense of, from the outside, people are like, damn, dude, right? But internally, I don't discount any of the things that happened, right? I don't discount that. So I would say, really, going back to the original analogy of driving down the highway while staring at another road. Basically, in the last 12 months, what I've done, what cancer did, is took the steering wheel and turned it 90 degrees and said, either you're going to keep trying to go down this road, it's going to get bad for you, or you're going to make a huge pattern interrupt here and get to the real road you should be on. And so I was like, I'm following that. So basically, I'm crossing the median. But when I say median, I'm talking like I'm driving through a forest of, driving through a field full of stuff, trying to get to the other road I should have been on.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, yeah, I'm now living more myself than ever.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't discount the road that I did drive on. I just didn't turn off. I didn't get off the off ramp in time. I didn't get off the off ramp when I should have.
Define should have.
There's a few places where the should have could have happened. By the way, the word should is always a tough one, right? I always tell people don't use the word should because you shouldn't do anything, right? That for another time. But yeah, it is a dangerous word.
I believe that also.
Okay. The way that I look at it is at the end of the day, I just wanted to have a life that was like a Discovery Channel, a National Geographic Channel, an Anthony Bourdain type of life. That's what I was built for. I told you before we got on the show, I lived in Australia and I did that bike ride from Bond Uni all the way down to Sydney. It took me 14 days. I rode my bike for essentially 6 to 8 hours every single day. I had more experiences in that 2 weeks than I did in 4 years of college.
I believe that.
And that's what told me and said, oh, wait, your life is the world. But when I graduated college, I said, but first, let me be a real estate millionaire because that's how I'm going to pay for all of this. And honestly, I got out of school and I was on my way. I was like, all right, this is working. And I was selling a bunch of houses, a bunch of real estate, lived in Chicago, sold a bunch of real estate, $10 million worth of real estate in 2007. And then if you remember what happened in 2008, anybody who's old enough, the Great Recession hits. So I lost it all, bankruptcy, everything. But before that, in 2007, I sold 10 million in real estate. My clients literally would say to me, we need to buy a house soon. Otherwise, Chad's going to leave this country and be all over the world somewhere. That's how much I talked about it. But I wasn't doing anything about it. I was selling real estate, schlepping people around in my car. And one of my clients goes, hey, look, I know somebody at National Geographic. Maybe they can help you get a job or something. I was like, well, I'll at least meet with them. And I go meet with this guy. And he's like, maybe we can get you can be an assistant to a photographer. And he's like, yeah, it pays like, you're not going to get paid much, like 25 to 30 grand. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I just sold $10 million in real estate. I'm going to be a real estate millionaire in no time. I'm going to build my own National Geographic. And that was one of those exit ramps that I missed, because what would be different if I took that job at 30,000, right? Instead of trying to be something I didn't care about, right? I could have been something I cared about, maybe with less pay, but over time could have built the thing. And so that was one of the exit ramps. And then there was other places in life where those things would show up. And I was like, no, but I gotta get this thing built and sold and done.
It was really like these moments where you feel like you could have chosen, in your words, your authentic self. And there was something else that was in the way that was driving you.
Yeah. I thought I had to do something else. Look, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to create, it was an expensive hobby, traveling the world for months on end. Like, unless you got to pay for that somehow, not just pay for that, but you got to pay for whatever else you got at home while you're gone. You can obviously whittle it down to a backpack, but that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Fascinating. I mean, that perspective, I think, is one of the broadest perspectives we can attain in life, which is the recognition that really at the end of the day, nothing matters as much as being authentic and being true to ourselves. That's what's really going to matter when we have that ultimate vantage point, which I think there's nothing more sobering than death when it comes to that. So you shifted into this YOLO mindset. And at that part of your process, what started to happen? Is this when you created Becoming Elite?
Yeah, in a way. Like at the beginning, I was just like, have ideas, do them, right? It's just do what you say you're going to do. And that was the thing. I said, I had all these ideas. Now I got a truncated timeline. I got to go do as much as I can. So I was just doing. And it wasn't even the full vision of what I thought, right? You can't execute on a life vision in 6 to 12 months. Like, it's impossible. That's why it's called a life vision, And so I was like, I have ideas. I'm going to go do them. And so I kept doing them. And there was one thing that I cared about. My brother and I had been working on this TV show concept for 15 years, right? 15 years, paying out of pocket, paying with our time and our energy and our effort. And I said, if we can get one of these concepts done, like this new version of the concept, which in my head was like, all right, this is actually a repeatable TV show we can pitch. I was like, and then I got diagnosed. And I was like, shit, I want to get at least one done to say we did it.
An episode.
10 episodes. So
a season.
It's a season. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So we went to, I can get into that in a second, but in summary, we went to, it's called Supply Run. What we do is we gather supplies and deliver these supplies to a remote community somewhere in the world. But the caveat here is this, is that we bring somebody with us as a third courier. So I'm a courier, my brother's a courier, and then we bring a third courier and they apply to be this third courier. And this third courier, though, one of the requirements is they have never left the States. So this individual, his name's JD. It's coming out in a couple of weeks, but his name's JD, and
amazing.
He lives in a Florida gated community. So when you talk about living in your little corner of the world, that is the epitome of that. And he laughs about it because he goes, now I know what you guys were trying to do. I get it now. And and he was like, he applied because he wanted to make that change, or he wanted to see something different. The reason we do that is because me and my brother would travel like this all the time, and people go, oh yeah, that's just what you guys do. I don't relate to that. So by bringing JD, who's never left, everybody's like, oh my God, I'm just like JD. We get to watch how JD gets to transform, because going from your Florida gated community to the mountainous region of the Himalayas in Nepal, and then taking a train from Kolkata up to Delhi and then into the Indian Himalayas on the border of Pakistan, like you don't see that in Florida. So that's the idea. And I told my brother, I was like, I just want to get that one done. I just want to just get it done, and I'll be happy, and I'm fine if I die. And so,
and you really felt that? You feel like you meant that?
I didn't know. No one has answers, and there's a whole nother world of the healthcare system in the United States. Right? I just didn't know. And so what happens, like anything in life, right? You try to get to that end goal, and then you get to it and you're like, what comes next?
Yeah.
And what happens is when you're like, what comes next? All of a sudden you lost your purpose, you lost your meaning, you lost your mission. And that's what happened to me, because I was YOLO for so long. And I said, I just need to get this done. So when I got back from that, I went into a 3 to 4 week depression. And I was like, what's over?
Where was this in your process? Like in the first 6 months?
This is the filming of the show was in month 9-ish, maybe 8-ish. And then when I got back, it was like basically month 9 to month 12 is where I hit depression, but that's where the next phase started. So when I got back, I had 3 to 4 weeks of depression trying to figure out, okay, I lived, I'm still here. What the fuck do I do now? And then that's where this idea of becoming elite started to hit. Because I realized, well, I have to become metabolically elite to see if my body can heal, become physically elite because that coincides with the metabolic side. And then the final piece is what I always knew, which is the mental is going to be the biggest component for everything. And so I was like, shit, where do I start? I generally understood nutrition, generally understood physical fitness. I ran a half Ironman in June with cancer and shit. I'll never do it again. They're boring as shit. I was just like, in order to live, I have to become elite in these areas. And I think if I have to become elite just to live, if I document this, maybe someone can glean some things that make their life a little bit better. So that's how it all came about. And then basically from July up until really a couple of weeks ago, I focused purely on mastery of the mental side. Now I'm moving to the metabolic and physical side.
Incredible, Chad. Do you find yourself thinking about the future? Do you find yourself in your mind, in your thoughts, visioning 5, 10, 20, 30 years in the future?
At the beginning, I did not. In fact, my wife, I created a death plan. I created a death plan where with every scan, I knew what I was going to do and what I wanted to do before my time was called. That's what I did before. But after working on this mental side, it's a little harder for me, right? Because people they're always like, oh, Chad, but I could get hit by a bus today. I go, but here's the fucking difference. I'm walking out in the street and I'm watching the bus hit me in slow motion. So like whenever I think about the future, it's always in the back of my head. But that's where the mastery of the mind comes into play. So now
I find that so fascinating. Where do you feel you're at now in your relationship with that?
Much better place. So if you want to look at percentages, take a pie chart. At the beginning, right? 99% of my mind was like, there is no future. I can't think beyond 18 months. I cannot think beyond 18 months. So 99% of my time was within 18 months or sooner. I've now switched that, and I'm probably now 85% as if I'm going to live to 100. That's a very big mentality difference, right? So now I can sit here and I can build
Amazing.
lifelong plans as if I'm going to get it.
Amazing. And that feels like neutral, congruent, real.
Oh, it feels absolutely real. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, there's anxiety, but there's a reason why I spend 2.5 hours on my mind every day.
What does that process look like?
So I wake up in the morning. First thing I do, I get up anywhere between 5 and 5:45, just depending. And I'll chug 25 ounces of water because hydration is the key to blood circulation, all the other metabolic stuff. Mm-hmm. Chug 25 ounces of water, and I sit down and I do 20 minutes of thinking. So I calm myself down. Even though I just woke up, I still simmer it down, sit down, calm down. And what I do is I just look at how my mind is operating from the moment I woke up. Meaning, what place are you in? Right? Are you in a positive place to start, or in a negative, or in a neutral? Where are you at? Mm-hmm. Then, depending on where I'm at, I start to think about, could it be? Right? What can it be? And there's a saying in some of it that I do is like, I imagine a world where the problem doesn't exist. And when I do that, that gives me relief to start my day. So then I start cranking away. I do deep work and I do things like this. And then at 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, depending on what I feel, right? That's when everybody shuts off. If you get up that early, right? It's that 3 o'clock feeling or that 2 o'clock feeling. It sucks big time.
Yeah.
Sucks even more when you got cancer because you're like, fuck, my mind is messed up. And I'll go for what I call a walking mental work. And basically what that is I'll put earphones on and I'll walk and I'll repeat all the cognitive changes I have made. And I repeat those words so that reinforcing the words, because as soon as you reinforce the words, you create new neural nets in the brain. When you create new neural nets in the brain, you actually produce the chemicals that make you feel the thoughts. That's called psychoneuroimmunology. Yeah. And so it takes an hour and 15 minutes, but all of a sudden by the end, it's like, I'm back, I'm good to go. And I'm like, dude, it's not a problem, right? I'm going to run the list for you because it's easy if people understand the list. So when I'm walking, I run this list. And I want you to remember when I run this list, that the words that I use, there was an opposite of that was not serving my thoughts or my physical well-being. Okay. Here's the thing. I believe that my thoughts gave me cancer. That's the clickbait headline. We can get into how later. But the first thing that came up was this idea of disappointment. I realized how disappointed I was in everything. Right.
In life prior to cancer.
Yeah. Like all the things I was trying to do didn't work. But remember, It was because I was inauthentic the entire time. Of course it wasn't going to work, man. You weren't even doing the thing you're supposed to do. It was life multiple times saying, maybe this isn't the thing. You're supposed to be over on that road. But I ignored it.
And it's always when we're in that state, right, and we've externalized things, we interpret it as life disappointing us.
Yes.
And then we get to a point where we realize, wow, I really disappointed myself by not staying true to myself in those moments. I think that's, it can be such a hard medicine, but also so empowering to realize that we have the power once we take responsibility to start to make change.
I'm just going to go through some of this real quick. Like, you think about this. You have 70,000 thoughts per day. 95% of those thoughts are the same as the day before, same as the day before, same as the day before. You should expect your life to change, but if your thinking is the same, how is your life going to change? On top of it, I always ask people when I do trainings, because I do online trainings on this stuff, I'm like, what percentage of those 70,000 thoughts do you think are negative? And I get ranges. People will type in, because it's usually on Zoom in the chat, like 60%, 70%, all the way up to 90% plus. Okay. So 90%, let's back it up. 70% of your thoughts, right, of the 70,000 are negative. And 95% of that is the same as the day before. So how is anything going to ever change? And so in my head, what I had to do is I had to sit down and see, it's like thinking about thinking. I had to find those thoughts that were actually disrupting everything in my life, in my body.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time finding them. Okay. So so what I'm about to run through. And when I go on this walk, this is what I repeat to myself. These are the opposite of the things that were not serving me. So I usually start off with, I love you, man. I'm proud of you. I believe in you. I have the medication. You're going to be okay. Take care of me metabolically, take care of me physically, take care of me mentally. You're going to be the fucking outlier. And then I say, why me? And then I answer, why not you? And then follows up with, go create for the world. You were born for this shit. This new life is saving lives. This mission has set you free and it has healed you. Anyway, so I run through that on that walking mental work. What happens is it changes the entire energy of my makeup. And when you change that entire energy, not only is my attitude and my demeanor enjoyable and back to my old self, but I believe that energy change shifts in my cells and gives me the chance and my cells a chance to actually identify the cancer and remove it. There's that. Sorry about this. That was a little more intense than I thought.
I'm crying with you, to be honest. I had an amazing conversation, Chad, with a friend of mine who is a doctor, a specialist. She's usually the doctor that people get sent to if they have mystery illnesses or kind of end of the line situation. And we were talking about, is it psychoneural immunology?
Yeah, it's a tough word. I always try to say that 5 times fast.
Exactly. And we ended up having this really amazing conversation around the standard approach to these things is to resist, is to fight. If it's cancer, to fight the cancer or to fight the virus or to fight the autoimmune situation. And obviously my background isn't medical, but I've facilitated like many, many people through blocks, challenges in their lives. And I could really relate to some of her perspectives. And our point of agreement was actually it's about creating this mindset that the thing that's causing the disease is also, you know, in one way or another, the antidote, to see it as the medicine and not fight against it, but actually work with it, to reprogram it, to start to move, to become the master of it, to observe it fully and not actually contend with it. This is what allows these kind of symptoms to start to move in a new direction. And I can so hear that in your process. I'd love you to just kind of speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, look, when at the beginning, it's like the fear, the word cancer was a killer. Part of that mental work one day, I was actually coming back from that half Ironman and while I was on the plane, I was doing that deep mental work to look and analyze what thoughts are actually not serving me. And the one that ticked up this time while I was on the plane doing that was, cancer is killing me. Now, the thing about it is, I don't say it out loud, but the thing is, it becomes a subconscious automatic thought in time. So cancer killing me, I never said it, and I didn't consciously be like, cancer is killing me. But I identified it that it was happening in the background. And so I was like, shit, that is not serving me. So I went and I was like, what's something else? What else is it? What could it be instead? And I identified cancer as healing me. And now when I saw that word, when I first saw that phrase, you think I was like, oh yeah, totally. I was like, fuck that shit. That was like the first thing I said. I was like, no fucking way am I. But in time, staying in that work, I repeated it multiple times. Cancer is healing me. Cancer. I probably repeated it 50 times while sitting there. And if you say something long enough, your brain will connect the neural nets.
Starts to create
starts to create the chemical production that makes you feel like you believe it.
Yeah.
And by the end of that work, I was like, oh my fucking God, I believe this.
It's the biology of belief.
That's exactly it. And so that's one of those components of that. There's something to follow up on that, but I can't remember what it was going to be. But that's the beginning. Oh, I now look at cancer. Don't get me wrong. I will often walk and be like, dude, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. But now I look at it and I call it my accountability buddy. It's my accountability buddy. If it wasn't there, I wouldn't be as
astute.
Exactly. Imagine if I had this radical remission and it was gone in like a month. How much change would have actually happened in me? No, it's got to sit here because it's forcing me to continue to get better and to work through this.
That's again, there's so much wisdom and power in what you're sharing. I think we do have a society and a culture that tends to have this attitude towards something that is painful, uncomfortable, evokes fear, heartache, pain of some kind, that winning or what we should be aspiring to or for is the eradication of that from our life and our existence. And what I've come to realize through my own journey is when something isn't just going away. It's for a reason, and it's there to teach us something.
Mhm.
And it's a journey we have to walk. And the longer we deny and fight and resist, the more we delay that journey of actually embracing what's there for us to learn. And it takes such a high level of surrender, I think. There's a Rumi quote, which is, the cure for the pain is in the pain. I live by that.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much truth and wisdom in that. And yet it can feel like the most counterintuitive thing, right? Of course, we want to run away, or we want to take the pill, or we want to do the thing, put our head in the sand and pretend it's not there. But when you turn towards that difficulty and embrace it, I think that's really where healing begins.
That's everything you want is on the other side of that obstacle. And the only way to get through it is through it. And so you used the words earlier, like fight, right? And I people are like, fight cancer, beat cancer. I'm like, dude, you understand that these cells are my cells. Like, these are part of who I am. I'm not going to fight myself. And so that's like the biggest misnomer in this world of disease and cancer.
Yes.
And so the minute you get rid of the fight mentality, and like you said, surrender. And it's not necessarily like you surrender and be like, take me prisoner.
No.
In fact, it's not that at all, right? It's, I'm going to surrender.
Circumstances.
These are my circumstances. These are the people that are going to show me the way. Or these are the things that are going to show me the way. And Stoicism, right? It's the idea that the obstacle is the way. The obstacle that you're currently facing is actually the way.
What's been the biggest surprise when it's come to embracing this obstacle in your life?
Many could be on that list.
Like the thing that you just could not have anticipated finding, discovering, learning about you or about life.
There's a lot on that list, and it's hard to rank them. I'd say the one that comes to mind is just human connection. The power of human connection. People are incredibly good. Actually, probably this one, it's like all that shit you're thinking about, feeling, and all that junk, it doesn't matter. When I die, when you die, we're not going to be remembered likely 50 years after we're dead, if not 10 or less. I'm just being generous. Like Abraham Lincoln, right? Sure, he's in America, he's remembered for his great works as president, but nobody has an emotional attachment to him. He's just, he's a character in history. No one can, like, a famous actor dies and you're like, oh, that sucks. And then 6 months later, you forgot that even happened.
Life is designed to continue to
operate without you
and change. And
so your only job is
there's a freedom in that, I think.
There is
as well.
On those walks, I'm like, dude, this fucking doesn't even matter, man. If you die in 18 months or 60 years, it doesn't matter. But are you going out with a bang? Somebody the other day told me I need to take hey man, just make sure you keep gas in the tank. And I was like, yo, dude, I don't want any gas in the tank when I die. If I have gas in the tank when I die, that means I did not use my potential.
Would you say, based on where you currently are in your process, that you are afraid of death?
I'm not afraid of death. I've never been afraid of death. I'm afraid of not doing the things I imagined doing before I die. Right. And with this disease, with this diagnosis, all that time I thought I had to get it done, it's now truncated. And I'm like, I wish I just started from the start. But I can't say I wish.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that. And more importantly, it's like now where I'm at, I'm finally in a better place, saying everything that led up to this point, I needed actually all those experiences to be building what I'm actually building with the travel company that I'm building with my brother. Like, I needed all those experiences. Without them, I wouldn't be able to build the next Nat Geo. And it's like, I just wouldn't have had it. So I'm like, that's why it's like, I would never change the path. I might have changed the exit ramp. I got off a little late. And the hope is that by getting onto the right road, my body will be like, all right, cool. We're in a good place. You did all the work now. We can do this now.
Yeah.
You've heard of radical remission. That shit happens.
I totally believe in that for you.
Same. I do too. And I have to believe in that. I want to believe in that. And I do believe in that.
This idea of getting to a point where you no longer negotiate with the past. You're no longer in a point where you're in the past thinking shoulda, woulda, coulda. I think for many, that's a really difficult place to get to. And not even necessarily because of a cancer diagnosis, right? Just regrets or a feeling of heartbreak that they don't know how to reconcile, to be able to fully believe that, and I see this in you, Chad, and it's so inspiring, life can actually be better in the future than it's ever been in the past, regardless of what's happened. Like the capacity to be present enough with this moment now that it wipes our slate clean of those feelings of regret or guilt or shame or disappointment or whatever it is. To me, that's what it really means to be free. To be free. And maybe someone's listening to this that has a version of that, and not necessarily medical, but something in their life that they feel like their life was put on a standstill in one way or another. And they stop believing that the future can be even better than they imagined because of this event or these events in their past. What would you say to someone who's in that state of mind?
When you say someone in a state of mind, meaning they're already seeing the potential because of an event, or you're saying an event who can't see it?
Who's stuck. Someone who's stuck in the past in that way.
It's one of the hardest things to do. Before this diagnosis, I would write every single morning for years. One of the affirmations I would write it out every morning, and I don't remember even the rest of them, but I remember this one, which was make the future bigger than the past. I wrote that down every single day. But it was extremely difficult for me to see that because I kept getting stuck, right? I kept getting stuck. So here's what I'd say to people, and this is now where I understand a lot about the power of the mind, psychoneuroimmunology, right? Essentially neuroplasticity combined with psychoneuroimmunology. So neuroplasticity is your brain wiring, right? It's the brain wiring and firing.
Mm-hmm.
Psychoneuroimmunology is where that brain wiring and firing will produce chemicals to make you feel the way you think. And that's that word feel. I know it's funny, especially in the world I come from, which is the software space. Everything is about data and metrics and numbers, right?
Yeah.
The idea of feel shouldn't be there. And that makes sense from some places. But when it actually comes to the human body, you need it to be different. And so what happens is if you can't get past it, and the reason is, because I usually draw this out for people, but the easiest way to think about it is, here's you today. Okay, you're here today. There's this thing you want in life. And when you say thing you want, could be anything. I want this house. I want this car. I want this vacation. I want this retirement. I want this freedom. Now, and then there's number 3 is the feeling you get when you achieve the thing. Now, the question is, let's put it out there. Financial freedom. If financial freedom is all you want and you're not going to feel that until you get it.
Yeah, it's so conditional.
How long does it take to get financial freedom? It could be 2 weeks. It could be 2 months, 2 years, 2 decades, right? Double that. So my point is you are going to deny the feeling until you get it. And when you deny the feeling until you get it, you're allowing things like frustration, anxiety, all these things. And what I call the hamster wheel, because you're just running in this world until you get the feeling. And so the flip here is this. You have to flip it. You feel it now. If you feel it now, right, your body energy changes. You still may not get it for 20 years, but imagine feeling what it feels like today. And usually what happens is when you do that, you're happier, you're nicer, you're a better person. Add all these things up. And when those things happen, a happier person, a nicer person, a more respectful person, a more energetic person, a more productive person usually stumbles into opportunities that help them get that thing sooner.
Can I ask, Chad, because I believe that what you're saying is the law. This is the law that I live by, that our vibrational state, our frequency informs all that we experience in life. And of course, when you're hit with something that is as destabilizing and as left field as a cancer diagnosis, of course, it then is impacting your ability to be a vibrational match to that of someone who is healed. And that then becomes the path, the obstacle of mastery, to be able to, irrespective of the circumstances, return to that state of wholeness and healing. But my question in that, and this is, again, one of the deep philosophical contemplations I've found myself in for many hours over the course of my lifetime, is, do you feel that there's ever an exception to that law? Like the spontaneity, the randomness of life. Do you feel like that can ever trump an individual's will who is completely aligned vibrationally to the outcome that they are seeking to create, actualize in their life that could ever beat the outcomes that person's trying to create.
If I'm hearing this right, you're asking, can a random event replace the outcomes you're trying to generate?
If you're completely aligned,
Yeah.
if you're completely aligned to those outcomes.
Honestly, the answer is it depends on how you look at it. Because every random event actually is not as random as you think it is.
Exactly. It's the paradox, right? Like
It really is.
I've done my own head in going down that rabbit hole, because there is a part of this design, a part of this process where even in a circumstance where an individual is completely masterful, is fully in integrity and aligned in a vibrational match for that which they are seeking, there is, as a part of that same path, this asking to let go, to have no attachment to what you are willing. And I find that so paradoxical.
Yeah, 100%. This is the most paradoxical part of it, is that humans love and crave control. We block our day, we plan our product, we plan our days, we plan everywhere. Life's the real fulfillment is being able to live in the unknown. And so like understanding that the unknown is actually full of everything you need. But the problem is when something happens outside of the plan or outside of the thing, we're like, that was random. Cancer was random. Is cancer really random? Yeah.
It depends your state of consciousness.
That's exactly it. Right.
There is so much science. I just want to add a caveat here to anyone that's listening to this with a skeptical mind. All that Chad is sharing has scientific, rigorous backing.
All of it.
All
of it does.
And I think that these concepts that maybe some might see through an ignorant lens and think that's a little esoteric, I just want anyone that sits in that category to understand that these philosophical concepts and science are not so far apart.
They're not. It's Albert Einstein.
Oh, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy and vibration.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what it is.
I think that might have been Tesla, but Einstein shared very similar philosophies.
There's a quote by Einstein about, all right, this is important to me. Oh, here we go. This simple, right? Everything is energy. That is all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way.
Yeah.
This is like one of the most brilliant scientific minds. It's literally law.
Yeah. And I think, our listeners, many of them live by this too. And it's, of course, inevitably easier to believe in the law when things are going right. When the circumstances of your life, you're like, yes, this is great. This is exactly where I want to be. And I believe that the strongest of leaders and the strongest of soldiers in our world get tested the hardest. Obstacles get put in their place because it's only the turning towards those obstacles that can cultivate a strength required to fulfill a big mission and vision on the planet. And it can be so hard to remember that when you're in the throes of despair, when you're in the throes of coming to terms with something that has completely altered your world.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why I say on that walk, you are going to be the outlier. I don't say an outlier. I say the outlier. There's a big difference in that word. You are going to be the fucking outlier. And then I also have a phrase in there that says you were born for this shit, right? Because it's one of those things where it's like, when I say it, it sounds asinine, and I have to say it enough times to believe it. Because then when I believe it, I'm like, everything shifts.
And when you feel it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. When I feel it, I believe it and feel it at the same time. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? How I'm talking to you right now, even 4 or 5 months ago, three months ago, I wouldn't have been able to pull this off. My nickname was Charger Chad. I like to just charge. And Charger Chad was gone for basically 13, 14 months. And Charger Chad is back, but with a very different mentality. I got scans coming up in January. I got to do this all over again. And it's, can I maintain Charger Chad regardless of the outcome? That's the thing I have to find out. That's part of the process of my next phase.
You've got this, Sean.
I appreciate that. And I believe I have it too. Honestly, it's one of those things where I believe in the power of the mind so much now that I was like, this is something I have to teach.
Yeah.
And I was like, but the only way that I'm going to teach it with credibility
Live it.
is if I live it and the cancer actually changes from it. And I said, the only way the cancer is going to change is if I have a regression and then an improvement. And that's exactly what happened. I was on medication, slight regression. And then that's when I started the mental stuff. 4 months later, improvement. And I'm like, okay. And my food didn't change. In fact, food got worse, right? I wasn't exercising as much. I'm like, okay, there might be something to this.
So let's talk a little bit about becoming elite.
Okay.
Before we move into a bit of a recap and debrief. Tell us about becoming elite, the mission. If you would encapsulate the mission in a couple of sentences, what would that be?
I love working with people who have ideas and do them. And in my world, right, that's a lot of founders in the tech space. That's performers of some kind, right? People who's like, you know what? Everybody has their way in life. And if you are happy with going to your job and coming home and cracking beers and hanging out, but you're happy, I'm fucking stoked. But if you're somebody who's out there trying to build something or trying to compete in something, and you're like, I just want to get to the next level because it's going to do something for my family or those around me, or I'm going to build this incredible product for the world that will make it better. Those are the people I like being around. And I was like, if I want to be around them more and I want to actually be a part of that, I was testing out beta coaching clients. And I tell them, I go, I know you can build something big. And that's what they plan on doing. And I go, and if I have a small part of that journey, that was exactly it. And so I said to myself, if I want to be around these types of people all the time, then I need to become elite. But that was secondary to actually living. I was like, shit, first I have to live. So I have to become metabolically elite, where the body is just in prime functioning condition. Become physically elite, and I have to become mentally elite. If I can do that, I'll live. But more importantly, I can translate that and give these people my clarity, my drive, my performance, but without my disease. And in the hopes that whoever's going to Mars first asks me to come along.
Is that the dream?
That is the dream. It's been the dream for a long time. Big, hairy, audacious goal is help colonize Mars.
You'd follow Elon?
Yeah, I'll go, man. Sign me up. But it's funny. Check this out. Like, I wrote this down for years. At least 5 years. I just had it on there, help colonize Mars. And I had this thing where it said, I'm going to be chosen to help colonize Mars because of my physical capabilities, because of my metabolic capabilities, and because of my mental capabilities, in addition to my financial and whatever else. And as I was writing these down, there was days when I was like, dude, you're not even close to any of this. And then cancer comes along, and what do you know? It's forcing me to get better. And I'm like, maybe now I might be elite enough for that.
And isn't that such a paradox in and of itself, that through the journey with cancer, you're closer to the possibility of colonizing Mars than you were prior. And I think that in itself, to me, shows that none of this shit is linear. None of this shit is fixed. If you feel closer to that potentiality than you did prior to your cancer diagnosis, I think that's the ultimate evidence.
I'm like, how can I not be chosen now? If I can withstand this, if I can withstand this. And I wanted to surf Mavericks. If anybody knows Mavericks, it's the wave south of Southern California, south of San Francisco. It's a big wave, 30, 40 feet. And it's hard. I'm not capable of that right now. But because I'm working on all these things, I can become capable of it. And it's before cancer though, it was a pipe dream, dude. You ain't doing that shit. You're still eating sugar-covered mangoes, crushing them all day, and peanut butter-covered pretzels.
Yeah, I love this so much that within the challenge, it simultaneously takes you closer and further away. I think that it's so amazing that these things we go through in life, it is the polarity. As dark as it gets, it can also get as light. As much as you feel helpless, you can also feel radically optimistic.
I oscillate between the two every single day. This is why the other hour, 15 minutes of mental work I do is right before I go to bed. And I sit there and I look and I process and I think and I fix and I work on. Even before I got on this, I started feeling some anxiety, because I was not anxiety about this, but I was cruising all morning on all the things I needed to do. And I was like, yeah, pump the shit out. And then I was like, fuck, I'm doing such good work right now, but what happens if I don't have time to finish, to see it, to feel it? And that triggers. And I'm like, dude, you were so strong the last 5-6 days. Don't let it dip. Got to get out and do that work again.
Yeah, whilst also being, I'm sure, adequately gentle with yourself, understanding. Yeah. I've loved this conversation so much, Chad. I've learned a huge amount from you, and I know our audience will as well. I just want to give you the opportunity to tell these guys how they can maybe support you, how they can connect with you. If they're in the space of the people that you serve and work with, obviously we'll share those links, what that journey might look like.
Yeah, I think the best thing, the good marketer in me is going to direct you to my website to sign up for my newsletter, right? So if you go to my site, chadvanags.com, you can just sign up to be on that newsletter. Right now, it's just updates on everything. But eventually, it's going to be sectioned out into the metabolic, physical, and mental eliteness documentation and the how-to, specifically how. So if you want to be a part of that, and while I like working with, I do one-on-one coaching with the founders and the high performers and the things like that. I still do a lot of things, specifically digital online teaching on some of these components. Mm-hmm. So anybody can be a part of those. And I have a first training coming out in January for the public, if you will. I usually do it for corporations and their teams, but in January, I'll be doing it for anybody that wants to be a part of it. So you can go to my website, chadvanags.com, sign up for the email list, and you'll be notified when it's up.
Yeah. And make sure you check the show notes because the link's in there for you guys. I really believe that this is just the beginning for you, Chad. And
I believe so as well.
Yeah. I really feel that in my being. Right. And I want to ask anyone that has listened to this show, been touched by Chad's tenacity and message and strength, just to spend a couple moments, maybe at the end of this podcast, just sending some of those positive vibrations and intentions to you, Chad, and maybe even taking the step to reach out and verbalize what you learned, what you took away. Because I know that when we feel like we're making an impact and a difference in the world, that can be one of the most uplifting and stabilizing experiences. So I really encourage you to take that action if it's there and not keep it inside. Love out loud.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for listening, my friend. If you enjoyed the show, please let us know by leaving a review or sharing the episode with someone you love and expanding this conversation as far and wide as possible. If you're looking for a community to have conversations with about global affairs, please jump in our Telegram group or join our free think tanks. Thanks for being a part of the shift towards a love-based civilization. We'll see you in the Telegram group or in the next episode.